Welcome back, my temporally tangled timekeepers. I'm your quantum superposed chronological confusion coordinator, simultaneously aging and rejuvenating across infinite realities. You're tuned into the Multiverse Employee Handbook, the only podcast that treats your career trajectory like a relativistic rocket ship, where the faster you rise through the corporate ranks, the slower time passes during your performance reviews. Today, dear listeners, we're diving into something even more paradoxical than trying to expense a meal you ate 20 years ago relative to the accounting department. The infamous twin paradox of relativity. That's right. We're exploring what happens when two genetically identical employees take different career paths and end up temporally asynchronous. Because as it turns out, your biological age and your LinkedIn work anniversary might not match up if one of you has been commuting at 99.9% the speed of light. Though I suspect relativistic effects still won't convince payroll to honor those overtime hours you're claiming from 2067. Now, gather round the quantum water cooler, my chrono-confused companions, for a tale that would make even Einstein double-check his calculations. I present to you The Expendable Employee, a story about why some corporate clones should remain temporally synchronized, especially if their retirement benefits come with an infinity clause. In the fluorescent-lit realm of Quantum Dynamics, Inc., specifically in the Expendable Resources division, which existed in a superposition of essential personnel and acceptable losses, Marlowe 7 was having what could charitably be called an existential employment crisis. It had started, as these things often do, with what seemed like a routine assignment. Marlowe 7, the seventh clone of the original Marlowe, was summoned to the director's office. "Marlowe 7!" the director exclaimed, her smile as artificial as the synthetic caffeine in the break room coffee. "Congratulations! You've been selected for our new Interstellar Branch Expansion Initiative." Marlowe 7 smiled weakly, all too aware that in corporate speak, selected usually meant no one else was foolish enough to volunteer. After all, being an expendable was less about career advancement and more about being advanced into increasingly improbable survival scenarios. "The assignment is simple," the director continued, sliding a tablet across her desk. "Just a quick trip to Proxima Centauri to establish our new regional office. Should take you about 10 years ship time. You'll be traveling at 99.5% the speed of light, so it's quite the efficient route." "And Earth time?" Marlowe 7 asked, already knowing the answer would involve numbers that exceeded his remaining vacation days. "Oh, just a smidge over 90 years, the director waved dismissively. "But don't worry about that. We've already got Marlowe 8 incubating in the clone vat. By the time you return, they'll have handled all the paperwork you'd otherwise be missing. Quite efficient, really." 2 weeks later, Marlowe 7 found himself strapped into the company's experimental relativistic shuttle, questioning his life choices, both the ones he'd made and the ones that had been genetically programmed into him. "Initiate launch sequence," the ship's AI announced in a voice that sounded suspiciously like the hold music from the company's customer service line. "Please ensure all personal identities and existential crises are securely stowed for the duration of the flight." The journey itself was uneventful, if you consider uneventful to mean watching the fabric of space-time contract before your eyes while experiencing acceleration that makes your atoms question their arrangement. Marlowe 7 spent most of the trip alternating between reading the employee handbook all 17,000 pages, and wondering if the original Marlowe had anticipated becoming a template for corporate cannon fodder. Establishing the Proxima Centauri branch office went surprisingly smoothly. The local silicon-based lifeforms turned out to be excellent at customer service, though they had an unfortunate tendency to dissolve when asked to work overtime. It was the return journey where things got complicated. As Marlowe 7's ship decelerated into Earth's orbit, his comm system crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel, please identify yourself and state your business," came a voice that sounded vaguely like someone who'd learned English from corporate motivational posters. "This is Marlowe 7, returning from the Proxima Centauri assignment, requesting permission to land at Quantum Dynamics Corporate Spaceport." A long pause followed, punctuated by what sounded like someone frantically flipping through very old records. "Marlowe 7? The Marlowe 7? From the Proxima mission? But that was... Hold on. Let me check. 89 years ago." Landing permissions were eventually granted, though Marlowe 7 couldn't help but notice the welcoming committee consisted primarily of historians and corporate archaeologists. "Remarkable preservation!" one of them exclaimed, circling Marlowe 7 as if he were an artifact. "He doesn't look a day over 40. "I'm 38, Marlowe 7 corrected, but no one seemed to be listening. The true scope of his temporal displacement became clear during his debriefing. Not only had 89 years passed on Earth, but the corporation had gone through 5 complete restructurings, 3 name changes, and a brief period of sentient AI management that everyone referred to as the unpleasantness. More disconcertingly, Marlowe 8 through Marlowe 12 had all lived full corporate lives during his absence. Marlowe 8 had become a mid-level manager. Marlowe 9 had revolutionized the company's approach to quantum encryption. Marlowe 10 had embezzled funds and fled to the Mars branch office. Marlowe 11 had written the definitive history of the company, and Marlowe 12 was currently serving as a decorative plant stand in the CEO's office after an unfortunate encounter with a reality-warping photocopier. "So, what happens to me now?" Marlowe 7 asked the Chief Temporal Resources Officer, a position that hadn't existed when he'd left. "Well, that's the fascinating part," she replied, pushing a stack of papers across the desk. "Due to what we can only assume was a clerical error of cosmic proportions, all retirement benefits accrued by Marlowe 8 through 12 have been credited to your account. According to our records, you have simultaneously worked here for 3 weeks and 217 years. "Is that good?" Marlowe 7 asked cautiously. "Good? It's unprecedented. Your pension alone would bankrupt a small solar system, not to mention your accumulated vacation days, which currently stand at 48,752. And since our corporate policy forbids discrimination based on temporal displacement..." The CTRO trailed off, looking increasingly distressed as she calculated the financial implications. What followed was a masterclass in corporate panic. Lawyers were summoned, accountants were consulted. The AI that managed the pension fund threatened to achieve sentience just so it could resign in protest. Meanwhile, Marlowe 7 sat in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine that featured an article about the retirement of Marlowe 11, written by the great-granddaughter of his former supervisor. In the end, a compromise was reached. Marlowe 7 would receive a temporally adjusted compensation package, which included a modest mansion on Mars, a timeshare in the Horsehead Nebula, and a gift card to the company store with almost unlimited credit. As for his employment status, he was offered a position as historical corporate continuity consultant, which primarily involved sitting in a comfortable office and answering questions like, was the company logo always this color? And did people in your time really use keyboards with their fingers? Now that we've seen how relativistic business trips can wreak havoc on both your biological age and your benefits package, let's talk about why Einstein's theories make family reunions particularly awkward for astronaut twins. The twin paradox isn't just a thought experiment that physicists use to confuse undergraduate students. It's a genuine consequence of one of the most revolutionary scientific theories ever developed, Einstein's special relativity. And unlike the plot of most time travel movies, it actually makes mathematical sense. It all started in 1905 when a 26-year-old patent clerk named Albert Einstein published 4 papers that would revolutionize physics. One of these, on the electrodynamics of moving bodies, introduced the world to special relativity, a theory that would forever change our understanding of space, time, and why your GPS works despite sitting in a metal box hurtling through space at 17,000 miles per hour. The heart of special relativity consists of 2 deceptively simple postulates. First, the laws of physics are the same for all observers moving at constant velocity relative to each other. Second, the speed of light in a vacuum is the same for all observers, regardless of their relative motion or the motion of the light source. The twin paradox emerges directly from these principles. Imagine 2 identical twins. Let's call them Temporal Terry and Stationary Stephanie. Terry boards a rocket ship and travels at close to the speed of light to a distant star system, while Stephanie remains on Earth. Because of the effects of time dilation, a direct consequence of special relativity, time passes more slowly for Terry on the speeding spacecraft than it does for Stephanie back on Earth. When Terry returns home, he finds that while only a few years have passed for him, decades have elapsed for Stephanie. He's still young and sprightly, while his twin sister has aged considerably more. It's like taking a quick coffee break and returning to find that your colleagues have retired, your office plant has evolved into a sentient being, and your unread emails have achieved critical mass. But wait, here's where the paradox part comes in. According to relativity, all motion is relative. From Terry's perspective on the rocket, it was Stephanie who was moving away at near light speed, not him. So shouldn't Stephanie be the younger one when they reunite? This apparent contradiction puzzled scientists and philosophers alike, though I suspect their confusion was nothing compared to what the HR department at Quantum Dynamics experienced when trying to calculate Marlowe 7's time-dilated benefits. When we return after this brief temporal decoherence, we'll dive deeper into why the twin paradox isn't actually a paradox at all, and why the secret to staying young might just be a one-way ticket to Alpha Centauri. Though there's probably a reason they don't mention that catch in the brochure. Welcome back, my relativistically ravaged rookies! While you were away, we calculated exactly how much younger you'd be if your commute involved near-light speed travel. Spoiler alert, not enough to justify the interstellar jet lag. Let's dive deeper into the actual physics of time dilation and why the twin paradox makes perfect sense once you understand that the universe cares deeply about your frame of reference, but not at all about your feelings regarding it. First, let's understand what time dilation actually is. According to Einstein's special relativity, as an object moves faster relative to an observer, time for that moving object appears to slow down from the observer's perspective. The effect becomes noticeable at significant fractions of the speed of light, which is approximately 299 million meters per second, or roughly the speed at which rumors travel through an open-plan office. The mathematics behind this is surprisingly elegant. The time dilation factor is given by the Lorentz factor, gamma, which is equal to 1 over the square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared, where v is the relative velocity and c is the speed of light. It's like a corporate efficiency metric that actually makes sense, which already tells you we're in the realm of theoretical physics rather than business management. To put this in perspective, if Marlow 7's ship was traveling at 99.5% the speed of light, the Lorentz factor would be approximately 10. This means that for every 1 year that passed on his ship, about 10 years would pass on Earth. No wonder he returned to find his clone siblings had already lived entire corporate lifetimes. They experienced a decade for every candle on his birthday cake. But here's where the paradox kicks in. According to relativity, all inertial reference frames are equally valid. To Marlow 7 on his ship, it was Earth that was moving away at 99.5% the speed of light, not him. So shouldn't the people on Earth have aged more slowly from his perspective? Why, when they reunite, is Marlow 7 the younger one? The resolution lies in understanding that the twin paradox isn't actually a paradox at all. It's a misapplication of special relativity. The crucial detail is that while Marlow 7's situation involves two inertial reference frames, Earth and the ship, it also involves acceleration. Unlike his Earthbound colleagues, Marlow 7 had to accelerate to reach relativistic speed, decelerate to stop at Proxima Centauri, accelerate again for the return journey, and finally decelerate to land back on Earth. These periods of acceleration break the symmetry between the reference frames. Unlike special relativity, which deals with inertial, non-accelerating reference frames, general relativity tells us that accelerated reference frames are physically distinguishable from inertial ones. It's like the difference between a job with consistent expectations and one where the requirements change every time your boss has an innovative vision. Totally different experiences. The math gets more complex when acceleration enters the picture, but the conclusion is clear. The twin who experiences acceleration is the one who ages less. So Marlow 7, having undergone the accelerations and decelerations necessary for his journey, returns younger than he would have been had he stayed on Earth. Real-world experiments have confirmed time dilation effects, though at a much smaller scale than our interstellar corporate adventurer. In 1971, Joseph Haefel and Richard Keating flew atomic clocks around the world on commercial flights and compared them with identical clocks that remained stationary. The moving clocks recorded less elapsed time than their stationary counterparts, exactly as Einstein's theories predicted. Even more practically, GPS satellites orbiting Earth experience time dilation due to both their velocity, special relativity, and their distance from Earth's gravitational well, general relativity. Without accounting for these effects, GPS positions would drift by about 11 kilometers per day, which would make finding the nearest coffee shop significantly more challenging than it already is on Monday mornings. The implications of these relativistic effects extend far beyond theoretical physics. When we contemplate interstellar travel or even distant future space colonization, time dilation becomes a profound, practical, and philosophical problem. A journey of just a few years for astronauts could mean generations passing on Earth. Communications would be not just delayed, but asynchronous across lifetimes. It gives waiting for an email response an entirely new dimension of existential dread. Well, my temporally tangled teammates, we've reached the end of another relativistic rendezvous. Today we've learned that in the multiverse of corporate time management, every business trip exists in a superposition of quick assignment and generational mission until someone accelerates to relativistic speeds and collapses the wave function. We've discovered that Einstein's twin paradox isn't actually a paradox at all. It's simply what happens when you forget to read the fine print about reference frames in your interstellar employment contract. Though I suspect Marlowe 7 would argue that finding out your clones have lived entire lives while you were away is paradoxical enough for one career. The physics is clear. Time dilation is real, measurable, and potentially career-disrupting if your commute involves significant fractions of light speed. From the slightly slower ticking of clocks on GPS satellites to the dramatic slowing of time near black holes, relativity reminds us that our perception of time's flow is anything but universal. So where does this leave us? Perhaps with a deeper appreciation for the subjective nature of time itself. Your Monday morning might feel like an eternity, while Friday afternoon zips by at superluminal speeds. A personal experience of time dilation that, while not relativistic in origin, feels just as real to your consciousness. And somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space-time, our friend Marlowe 7 is enjoying his temporally adjusted retirement package, while Quantum Dynamics Incorporated's legal department continues to draft increasingly complex clauses about the non-transferability of benefits across relativistic reference frames. Because in the end, not even time dilation can save you from corporate fine print. This is your quantum coherent correspondent, reminding you that in the multiverse of temporal experiences, we're all aging at different rates relative to each other, though most of us can't blame it on relativistic business travel. And as Einstein himself might have said, had he worked in corporate culture, put your hand on a hot stove for a minute, and it seems like an hour. Sit in a meeting for an hour, and it seems like a quantum eternity. Until next time, may your reference frames remain inertial and your time dilation negligible.
Hi, this is Ivy from Terrytown, Nebraska. The Multiverse Employee Handbook was created by Rob Corrigan, is edited by Joseph Cooper, and narrated by David from 11 Labs. All science fact-checking is done by Wolf Edmonds. The Employee Handbook staff includes Hugh Mann, Dr. Eric Hale, and Miss Hanley. Please be sure to subscribe to get updates on new episodes.